Hey,
Hi there.
trying to get some
Middle.
good light somewhere.
Hi, everyone that's here. We won't start until 5 or until we have a quorum just after 5.
Hi, Lydia. How are you?
Hi, Kurt. I'm not sure who the 32540, if that's one of our applicants or if it's someone else, but we'll find out later. And just so everyone knows, these meetings are being recorded. And you can find them on the town website or also on YouTube under Wellfleet Town Media, in case you want to go back and watch the videotape. Hey, Meryl.
Hi, Lydia. Hi, Gordon and Jim.
Hi, Meryl.
Hi, Mary.
Luke is here.
Oh, good. Luke is here. I know that Carol Ubriaco is not coming tonight, and Tom Sigia isn't going to be able to be here either. So that's everybody, right?
Mm-hmm. Once we hit 5 o'clock, we can start.
Yeah, okay. 1 minute. Okay. It's 5.
There's Rick. I'll admit him.
Oh, great.
Okay.
And Luke, can you hear us? I see your
Yeah,
name. Oh, good.
I can hear you. I'm
Okay.
here.
Glad you're here. I'm Meryl Mead Fox. I'm a co-chair of the Historical Commission. And why don't we go around and introduce ourselves?
Lydia Vivante, co-chair.
Gordon Kahn, Commissioner.
Tim McAuliffe, Commissioner.
Luke Manning, Commissioner.
Great.
Rick Rivero, applicant.
I think we'll just do commissioners for now, but thanks, Greg.
I was out a bit late, guys. I apologize.
That's quite all right. And just to let everybody know, I think we found what works best with the Zoom calls is, or the Zoom meetings, is to have everybody on mute to start with, and then we'll call on you when we're ready for you to present. If you want to say anything, it's, let's see, Lydia, would it be better for you if people raise their hands like that or raise their hand with the reactions?
I think either way is fine.
Okay.
It's a little tricky when when we're doing screen sharing. I'll probably have a harder time seeing anybody at that point. So could speak up if you're not being heard yet.
Okay. Yeah. So you would need to unmute, in other words, to do that. Yeah. All right. And so the first item on the agenda is 206 Holbrook Avenue. And who is presenting about that? If you're presenting, can you unmute yourself, please?
I just did. Thank you. I'm Mark Harmon from Cape Associates.
Hi, Mark. Thanks.
Hey, Mark.
Hi.
So do you have, Lydia, are there items to show?
Yeah, let me see if I can manage that.
Lydia's very kindly handling the screen sharing, but it's been a challenge for us dealing with these meetings, so please bear with us. She's done an incredible job with this.
Oh, no. Just a moment, please. Mark, which of the PDFs and images would you like me to start with?
How about Gannon 2 JPG?
Okay. So I'm going to open that file, and then I'm going to stop the share and then start again. Hopefully this will work. All right. There we are.
Okay. So I actually presented to you people, I believe back on March 3rd, about tearing that existing screen porch down and building a deck, which was approved.
Mhm.
But we did not make a notation on the application that the 2 windows that you see above the existing screen porch were going to be removed and a sliding door was going in its place. So that's what I'm here for today.
Great. Do we have a picture of the sliding door to look at?
I believe Ann Carroll sent one over today, so you probably do, back on the other page.
Let me just look at this. I don't think it shares. It's in the rendering, right? The screen door, the concept.
It was.
I think she sent an actual document from Anderson, correct?
She did, yes.
Should we look at the rendering first, maybe, and take a look at the placement of the screen door in relationship to the 2 existing windows and the windows up above?
Sure.
Thanks, Gordon.
So I have the rendering up on the screen. I'm just gonna, moment. All right, here's the rendering.
Right.
Great. Okay.
So the placement of that sliding glass door is determined by a combination of where the existing windows are and by the plan, in the interior plan, I would imagine.
Correct.
And is it intended to be centered under the window that's to the left on the upper floor?
It is.
Okay. And they definitely would prefer to have a screen, a sliding door as opposed to a single French door with a side light or,
I think they would be open to whatever you guys would advise. She did mention that a French door would be fine.
it's just that the scale of kind of an Anderson sliding glass door, without divided lights and without any kind of demarcation within the window itself seems not annihilating to me, but a little jarring in the context of the whole house, which is so charming.
Right. The
And
only,
again, it's on the back, and
that's exactly what I was just going to say. No one is ever going to see it except for the Gannons and her family. But
right.
like I said, she is open to putting a or unit out there if that's what you would prefer.
Well, maybe the Gannons would like to see a drawing that shows sort of what a more traditional French door would look like in
Okay.
that place, even if it had a single leaf and two side lights, or if it were a door flanked by a window or something kind of charming and old-fashioned,
Okay.
because the house has a kind of a charming quirkiness to it everywhere.
It sure does, doesn't it?
And it might be nice to, have it not be quite so neat,
Okay, so I will go back and we'll do a rendering with a French door unit, whether it's a single with side lights or a side by side. And
Yeah, sometimes we've done like a French door next to which is like a very tall double hung window,
Mhm. Okay,
that's kind of just, and I don't want to be the design architect here,
no,
except to say that my intention would be to find something to put back there that, even though no one's going to see it except them, that is quirkier and kind of less neat and less, sliding glass doorish.
okay.
The other possibility that I can think of would be, I know that, I believe it's Marvin makes a sliding French door, a sliding door that looks like a French door. So it has divided lights all the way down.
That's right.
And
And
so they,
a thicker bottom rail and styles.
Okay, so let me ask you this. The existing windows, I believe, are 2/2.
They are, yep.
So if we had a divided light French door or sliding door, would that be too much
Yeah,
divided?
I think it's too many little light cuts because it really is not from that era of those tiny light cuts. It's really more Victorian. And it's 2/1. Is that what it is in the back? I can't see.
Yeah,
hard to tell.
I think
two
the
to
two front, as I recall, the front windows on the second floor were like 6/1 or something like that. Is that right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I just a suggestion.
Yeah,
Maybe
of course.
maybe play around with something that's not quite so. We're going to put a sliding glass door in here.
Okay. Okay.
That, a combination of things would be nice. I mean, you've got that great front elevation with that porch extension and those narrow, tall gang of windows across there.
Right.
That really kind of sets the tone for the house.
Okay.
That kind of a charming quirkiness, kind of a long, lean proportion.
Okay.
Those things are all important to me, even though nobody's going to see it. And I really don't mean to give anybody a hard time. I'm just suggesting that maybe we could, take it a step, put another layer into it.
Sure.
Take it a step further. So it's not just putting a sliding glass door in.
Not being confrontational on, and we're here just to hear what you guys have to say, what you think you would like to see, and then we'll go back, design, and come back.
Okay.
Great.
Fair
Thank
enough.
you for the openness to suggestion.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Your comments on this on your part, Mark, or any of the commissioners? Okay, so I make a motion to vote for a continuance to our next meeting.
Okay, why did he do that? Okay, hold on for 1 second. I'm sorry, you guys have to excuse me for just 1 second. I'm just going to mute.
Okay,
Sure.
great.
I'll second that, Meryl.
Okay. I vote aye.
I vote aye. Do we need
Yeah,
Gordon though?
Well, he can vote once he's back.
Okay.
Okay, I guess we'll wait. All right, so the next item on the agenda is 110 Cannon Hill. And who is presenting on this?
There's no one presenting for that, as far as I know. But I had it on the agenda just in case they showed up.
There's somebody on the bottom of the screen who just has a telephone number, so I'm
Yeah,
not sure.
I'm not sure who they are. They haven't identified themselves. If they,
I'm here. Can you hear me?
yep,
Yeah,
In the top of the row there, Russell Perry, Highland Builders.
oh, good, you are here.
oh, thank you
Right.
for being here. Okay. All right, and do you have items that you would like Lydia to present for the meeting, Russell?
Well, do you have the pictures that I sent in?
Yes,
That I circled the porch area that we're going to be presenting the work on?
Yes.
yes.
What we're presenting to do is remove all it is storm panel windows in this porch area right now.
Mhm.
And we're proposing to remove those and put Anderson sliding or gliding windows in.
I apologize for having to excuse myself.
Do we want to just finish the vote from that previous one before we go on, or do you want to?
I'm going to try to find, do you have Cannon Hill ready to go when we're done with the vote?
Yeah,
Okay. Gordon, we made a motion for a continuance on Holbrook Avenue. And it was seconded, and so we just need to vote on it.
Okay.
So I vote aye for a continuance. Merrill,
Gordon, I.
Jim, I.
Lydia, I.
Luke, can you unmute?
Sorry, Luke, I.
Thanks. Okay, and so Lydia is finding the information about Cannon Hill.
I have it on the screen now. I don't know if you can see it.
No, we just see 110 Cannon Hill and something that says WLF.
I think that might be it. Hold on.
I don't know how you do that. I think she's
Do you see it now?
Yes, but it's sideways, but that's all right, we can see it.
Right.
The way we got them, so we can, I think we can adjust.
Is there a way to turn it or, oh, good, that's wonderful, thank you.
That was impressive, Lydia.
Should be on my pay grade.
I did it with my mind power, you know, just went.
And again, I apologize that I had to excuse myself. I had a problem with one of my kids. Could you take a minute and re-explain what you were explaining earlier about the window replacement?
What we're doing is proposing to, all the windows are just storm panels right now,
Mhm.
storm windows.
Yeah.
And we're proposing to remove those and put Anderson, gliding windows in. On that end view right there, we're proposing to move that, put a door in like kind, the one that's there, but remove the window and center the door on that end of the building, on that porch. So it'll have a door there, then windows all across the face, just like they are now, but they're a little taller. We're looking to replicate more like the windows in the rest of the house. So the top of the window is going to be more in line with the top of the door.
Good.
And the sills will be where they are.
And will they have divisions in them the way the windows on the existing?
As far as I know, I don't know if I can get gliding windows with a horizontal bar.
Oh, they're gliding windows. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that as a porch, at least half the window is open with a screen.
Right. And will they be ganged together, kind of side to side without?
Yeah, they'll be kind of like they are now, but they'll have one structural post between each set of window, and there's 6 windows across that street side.
And the structural post will be covered by a piece of trim, not by a piece of siding. Is that right?
Right. I'm going to replicate all the trims the way they are out of wood.
Mhm.
And then we're putting pristine white shingles back. Just like, we're trying to keep it the way it is
Yeah.
for the look. Even though the rest of the building's clapboarded, some reason they shingled that years ago.
Part of the story of the house.
Yeah, it's an oldie. It's an oldie.
Yeah.
So
Can't
when
help
you
but
say you're
think
going to
that-
replicate the trim, do you mean replicate the trim that's up above or replicate the trim on the porch now?
We're just dealing with this three-sided porch. We're not touching the roof.
Yeah,
Where
I just mean on the windows on the porch, what will the trim be like? Will it
it'll
be
just
like-
be flat wood trim like they have there now.
Right.
Okay,
It doesn't look like it's anything that special.
No, I mean, it looks like simple and quiet, and I'm not trying to be something else. I like it.
That's pretty much all they're doing to the outside. And the inside, we're just tightening it up, basically. You
And you
can
said-
you can see through the floor to the ground right now, even though it's a porch.
here,
So we're screening that, throwing a little insulation in the walls when they're open,
Mhm.
just to kind of tighten the thing up.
Lydia, could you go back to the rear elevation for just a moment? Yeah.
The rear,
Yeah, that one. So there are like, the windows are a bunch of different sizes across the back here. I guess the center one is wider, then there are two flanking narrower ones, then a gang of three on each side of that. Are you going to make reference to that rhythm at all?
No, we were gonna keep the same size windows all the way across.
Mhm. Okay.
Gordon, this is the front of the house, actually, just so you
Oh,
know.
I beg your pardon, the front.
Okay, any other questions? Or comments? Would anybody
looks
like to
like-
make a motion?
the front porch itself looks like it was maybe more done in the 50s or 60s rather than, I don't know, something about it that the window style and things look much more contemporary,
Mhm.
more modern, and it would have been maybe a wonderful thing had they put on a more traditional porch. I guess this is a three-season kind of space, so.
Yeah.
Can you fit a gliding window in next to the door, or is that going to be a double hung?
We were gonna eliminate that window and center the door.
Oh, okay.
I think that's a great idea. Well, I would be happy to make a motion to accept the plan as is.
I second it.
Okay. And so I vote aye, Merrill,
I,
Aye.
oops, sorry.
that was aye, Lydia, and aye, Gordon. Jim?
Hi, Jim.
Okay,
Luke, aye.
great. Thank you very much. Glad you were able to come this time, Russell.
Yeah, I'm glad I could make it. Thank you.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye.
And then our next item is 15 Squires Pond Lane, Rick Rivero.
Good evening, honorable chair people, members of the commission, and I don't see Paul, so I guess not staff. For the record, my name is Rick Rivero. A number of us have met, and we're here tonight to talk about 15 Squire Pond Lane. I certainly appreciate everybody's time. Appreciate the folks that were able to go out and take a look at this lovely structure. I appreciate Rich Robichai for being on with us tonight. I also have Mr. John Weber that most of you have met. He's the gentleman that started this undertaking. John's family had a place on Kendrick for a number of years, and we're looking to see if we can find him a place here in downtown Wellfleet. This started in the middle of the pandemic last year, and we were on a substantial healthcare $20 to $30 million healthcare project that was certainly trying in the middle of a pandemic. And I said to John, you know what, if we can make it through this and get this done on time with single entry and testing at the at the entry and keeping everything moving back the last spring when there were a multitude of unknowns. Then we'll go see if we can find him a place in Wellfleet. And here we are in front of you folks tonight.
Rick, I'm just going to interrupt you for 1 minute because it seemed like Lydia wanted to say something earlier on.
We have a pretty straightforward chimney removal project on the agenda, Mill Hill Road, and I just wondered if we could go to that before.
Absolutely, Lydia. I think that's a great idea.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, so 55 Mill Hill Road, chimney removal. And thank you for unmuting.
Sorry, hello.
Hi, we're Tim and Renee. It's actually 51 Mill Hill.
Yes.
Which I think was right on a file that I saw, but just
We want to make sure that the address was correct.
We will
So
correct that.
we're
Thank you.
homeowners. We're Tim and Renee. Nice to meet you guys.
Hello.
Tim's gonna walk through the plans because he's the resident expert, but just wanted to say hello. Yeah, and just say that we're excited to be moving to town.
Thank you. We just, we're in the process of doing some interior renovations, which I know is not part of the historic board, but one of the things that came up is the removal of a chimney. And you said earlier that it's straightforward. I don't know if you need photographs from us or if you've come seen the site, but we sent Lydia on our application, has photos of the exterior of the house that we took, if you'd like to look at those.
Great. Can you show those? Yeah.
Yes.
I think they're included in the application file that I gave you, Lydia.
Yep, I've got it. I think I've got it open here. Let's see. Tell me if you see it.
Yes,
Can.
that's actually the eastern side of the building, which is seen from a private road. I was hoping to show I think it's the first one. It should be that one, is the front of our building taken from across the street. And that's, we love how the house looks. We don't want to change anything from the outside. I do have some renderings, so I apologize that they depict the windows as 4 up, 4 down when they're actually 2 over 2. It was just a quick mistake that I had made, but we have no plans to change anything on the exterior except for removing the chimney. When we replace the interior heating system, the chimney is no longer needed. It's part of a leak that we have in the house, which has required us to repair the roof, which we will be removing and repairing the roof exactly as it stands. Again, we love the house. We don't want to change anything, but unfortunately the chimney takes up a lot of floor space on the interior of the house. Since it's not a large design feature that we fell in love with for the house, we'd like to get rid of it.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments?
I mean, it's sort of interesting, you know, just speaking on a personal level, I have a cottage behind my house and I'm contemplating renovating it, and I don't have any need for the chimney either. But the chimney in that case is a more prominent part of the composition, painted white with a black cap, and looks like an old Wellfleet chimney. And it's very visible from the street from 2 different angles. And so in that case, I was thinking that I would be compelled to have some sort of steel installed in order to support the top part of the chimney while removing the rest of the chimney, which is, you know, what we do in the city. I mean, we have, you know, I come across this every so often. But I can't say here in this case that the chimney is particularly additive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's sort of where I land on it, that if it were, you know, a more prominent architectural feature in a more significant location, maybe.
Mhm, I agree.
I do too. It's interesting that you can see the chimney from the back, but you can't even see it from the front in the picture you gave us. Is that true? You can't see it from the street?
In fact, in the first image, in this image, I'm actually standing across the street, and then there's a little embankment, and I'm up on the embankment because I was trying to see if you could see it. I have a background in, I went to college for architecture. I worked for a historic restoration architect. You know, anything that is, I don't want to mess with, but that's why I wanted that to be the first image, because it's so hard to see. And we don't want to mess with anything. We love the town. We don't want to mess with anything with the town. So we were trying to figure out how do we show that we're really not trying to make any waves here? And
Yeah.
the two pictures on the east and west side are taken within the site. So from our side yard, but again, so the next picture down, this is taken from a private driveway next to us. And then this one here is taken from our driveway. Behind it, there's woods, so there's no road or anything to see that view. It's just the front view that you would see for the general public, and you can't even see that the chimney's there.
Coming down that hill on Mill Hill Road, when you look, you can't see the chimney at all, right? I didn't even know that had a chimney. Yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't look like a historic chimney either, because those tend to be shorter and squatter.
Yeah.
I have photographs. I don't know if it's worth me screen sharing, but I don't even think that it's original to the house.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'll move to approve as presented.
I second the motion. Merrill, I.
Jim, I.
Lydia, I.
Luke, I.
Gordon, I.
Congratulations.
Thank you
Thank
very
you
much.
so
We're so
much.
excited. And we'll mute again.
Okay.
Joining us. Bye-bye. Okay, Rick, thank you for your patience.
Oh, my pleasure. Would you like to do the Briar Lane demo delay before I resume?
No,
No.
that's okay. Do you want Lydia to put pictures up?
You know what? Let's. My next piece is there's actually two. I believe you will find there's two aspects of this presentation, and I believe your authority, as I understand it, the exterior features and appearances, number one, and number two would be your authority within your demo delay bylaws that would potentially allow us to proceed as we've applied for. So what I'd like to do, because we've really only presented on the exterior features, and I can't wait to get Gordon going on this, because this is such an eclectic structure that let's start with some pictures and renderings, if that would be acceptable by the commission.
You want to do, there's one that's 11, a larger file. There's two different files. Do you want me to do the east facing or the?
Yeah, you know what? Let me see how they're depicted. We had a, what do they even call it? Let's go through the pictures and then the renderings. And what we did was we rendered it in about the same light and about the same angle as the pictures. There's one that's just the four-sided kind of boring elevations that we may segue into afterwards.
Okay, so that was just the application. This is the Form B. This is the east facing PDF. Let me just see what this is. Okay, so. There.
I don't see anything. It's just black.
It may take a couple minutes to load. Yeah, that's pretty substantial. That's the easterly facing elevation as we see it now.
Yeah.
And that was very similar to the picture in the Form B, the new February of 21 Form B. There's certainly some interest there, Gordon. Once we get into the middle of this and took the lath and plaster and furring and sheetrock in the probably the more recent 75 or 70 or so years of renovation and or cover up or bastardizing, or call it what you will. It certainly appears that what looks like in that elevation is a salt box type of structure that was constructed probably in about the same vintage as the Form B. All used material, simply because you've got mortise and tendons and holes and pegs and a multitude of things. And for instance, what's left of the rafters and some of the roof purlins, that it wasn't new when it was there, or it came out of another structure.
Mhm.
If we move to the western side, guys, that is another structure that is probably of about the same vintage, similar type of framing construction, but different members as well. There's some actually round logs in there. Again, the lumber was never of the same vintage, but I believe those two were probably either moved or brought here in together and about the vintage that the Form B had.
Mhm.
If from there, just looking at the construction type, the dormer, Gordon, that's actually board members that's actually facing would actually be the southern elevation. That little bump out
Towards Main Street, you're saying?
was added on at some point in time, because that's more of a conventional framing method, not post and beam, although older, I'd say probably 40s, 50s.
Mhm.
They just cobbed that into the post and beam roof members, and Luke could attest to the fact that it's kind of surprising that it's still there. And the Rich Robichai had noted that the folks that shingled that were actually laid on their belly because they're afraid they were going to come through. But and then the northerly elevation structure was added, I think, sometime after that, based on the more conventional framing type. That's actually the kitchen area. To give you a little bit of the history, it's certainly of an eclectic shape, and there are a multitude of pieces that came together on this. Lydia, if you don't mind, if you could go to our proposed rendering, I believe it would be the next slide. There you go. Quite honestly, our proposal is to essentially mimic the same structure that we have there, same location, same footprint, same window locations. There's actually one added, folks, and that's the one in the middle of that salt box type of structure. We discovered that had been covered over the last time they sided it. It was actually, it's in the stairway. We would actually like to put that back in. We're also showing this with 6/6 muttons because I think that was more suitable to the affluence of this structure. Somebody that uses used wood probably in that vintage is not going to have 1/1s or even 2/2s, but certainly you can weigh in on that. And then clearly from the picture to the door, that door looked like it was maybe a builder supply door based on the affluence of the folks that resided there, over the last 70 or so years. It certainly wasn't in keeping. So we are proposing to go to a door style, a little bit more in keeping with Main Street and the rest of the area, although keeping it in the same location. A few of the window sizes have changed to be able to conform to egress windows in the back for the bedroom pieces. Other than that, our general intent, which we'll get into our next piece in the demo delay part, was to essentially emulate the eccentricity, the eclecticness of this structure as closely as we possibly can. If you don't mind, Lydia, perhaps we'll go to the next picture, which would be a southerly elevation.
Southerly, I have a north-facing rendering next.
Yeah, we can go right to the north facing, that's fine. And basically what we're doing there is to show you the pictures as it stands right now, and then our renderings as to what we're proposing. That's as it looks now. That skirt on the bottom, that brick skirt that we thought might be a foundation, actually it was set on timbers with decking over the top of it in the sand, and that brick had to be added in just as a skirting material. Our proposal would be to use that same brick on a concrete foundation, but to achieve the same the same look. It'll have a different function, but our proposal is to have that look the same. And we've noted really on item 3, the second half of that, the bullets 4, 5, 6, and 7 are replicate the window locations period in affluent style, replicate the eave rake and cornice trim details, replicate the flat trim window details and cornice trim, and replicate the cedar shingle wall siding and asphalt roofing as shown actually in the pictures. Certainly, if one was to go back and take a look at the assessor's picture, that did show that window. It also showed a multitude of different color siding and a roof that about a third of the roof shingles were missing on, hence what we found as far as degradation was concerned in the framing and the structure of the building itself. Again, our presentation was photographed in architectural renderings, and then the list of materials would be an Anderson Series 400 Woodbright true divided light windows that actually have the applied moldings, the grills between and the applied moldings in wood. 6/6 is what we're proposing because we felt that was more in keeping with the affluence of this structure when it was put together. There's not, as you can see in the pictures, there's not one matching window in that building now, and they're all in various manufacturers and all within the last, I'd say 30 or so years. But I'm certainly open on that. We're going to use an AZAC rather flat trim, and the dimensions identical to the existing. We're going to emulate the AZAC cornice, rake, and soffit materials, more in keeping with it, because it's right now, none of it's the same, more in keeping with the salt box structure than the other adders, because there's some, I'd like to follow a uniformity standard and use that throughout. And I really think that the eave and the rake detail with a little rake extension and eave extension not only preserve the siding a bit better, but it's what you see in that last picture and more in keeping, I think, with the period and what that salt box structure was. We replaced the cedar shingle wall siding, asphalt roof shingles, and the brick skirt, utilizing actually the materials that are on site. The approximate ages of the materials, as we're talking about the exterior look, cedar wall shingles, they're less than 10 years old. I think they're pine shingles, grade D or better. They're kind of a little bit of lipstick on it. The asphalt shingles are less than 10 years old, and Rich did share with us that the nephew that was siding this thing was laying down because he was afraid he was going to come through. And once we got the lath and plaster off or sheetrock and furring off the ceiling, we certainly concurred with him not standing up because he probably would have been in the basement. The pine trim, 10 to 30 years old in various states, and it was painted. The windows, I'm saying 10 to 40 because there are a couple of relatively newer windows on the back side of the kitchen, but none of it matches. You get a multitude of types, styles, and manufacturers. The brick skirt that you see down there, I'd like to think that was probably somewhat original to the construction vintage in and about that time frame, and we would plan to use that same brick. And then the interior post and beam, those components date back prior to the construction of the noted structure because they did in fact have a prior life, and it wasn't the same life because the mortise and tendons and notches and pegs do not line up with what they have here. Some of it looked like it might even come out of boats, but I'm not a historic architect, so somebody else may be, to add to that better. So what I'd like to concentrate on now, guys, is what your thoughts are on our exterior proposals, features, and appearances. And I would love to get that, maybe get your input on that. And then I'd like to talk on the demo delay bylaws and go through your authority that may allow us to proceed as presenting and disassembling and replicating the whole structure. But let's stay with the architectural, the exterior pieces. We can talk about windows. We can talk about the door. I think we can talk about trim, although we're planning to essentially emulate everything that's there now.
So, great. So,
Gordon, I can't wait, Gordon.
no, so let's just maybe talk a little bit theoretically first.
Sure.
So replicating the massing of the existing structure sounds terrific to me.
Same footprint, same square footage, same location, same everything.
Right, same everything. And getting the windows basically where they are, and you don't have to justify that other window in there. It's fine to put that window back. In a composition like this, it's not impactful in a negative way. I guess one of the things that I worry about with this sort of thing, and I've seen it happen in town over and over again and in other places too, is that the subtlety of the proportion of the trim and making it look too new and too nice. Do you know, I'm trying to get to a point, and I don't want to name any specific buildings in town that this has happened to, but they kind of get too fixed up and they kind of lose all patina, and the trim isn't quite right, and everybody's got a black mutton bar these days. And so I just am saying, and I know you're saying that you're going to replicate all of those details that I'm so concerned about, taking your cues from the rake boards that are on the salt box portion photograph that we're looking at now.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I think that's great. I mean, if you can do that and you can replicate that, and that's the standard that you use, then I think that would be really fine.
You're gonna have to miter those, Gordon, because it's an angle piece the way that structure is done. But it's a I mean, and again, you're gonna have to custom make a lot of these pieces.
Mhm.
However, it's one has the ability to replicate that.
And you're going to do that.
That's correct.
That's good.
Yeah, I was just hoping to comment because I feel that if you demolish this building and put up something that looks like it, it's a replica. You're replicating, you're losing all the historic material there. And I think it sets not a very good precedent for the commission.
Well, let's get into that next in the demo delay bylaws. Clearly I could wait 18 months and put whatever I wanted on there, and I don't think that would do any good. And I would love to have disassembled the inside of this building, and have found it to be somewhat structurally sound. Again, I'm a structural, professional engineer and a building inspector. So I know what Paul's going to be up against. I know what, Luke and John and I had chatted about, and, to meet the building standards, your new standards for wood construction in the wind ratings. I was hoping that I'd open up the walls and find that I'd be able to sister a few members or flitch plate a few things and get it to where I could just put it back together. But unfortunately, that was not the finding. So if we could kind of stay with the outside portion, that would, get any input we could on that, and then we can segue into your demo delay bylaws, and we can discuss a little bit more about the pros and cons of what we're proposing. While we're looking at that elevation, Gordon, a couple other minor issues. We talked about the door and that really not being in keeping at all. That bulkhead certainly isn't in keeping, and we weren't proposing on putting that bulkhead back in. We certainly weren't proposing putting that electrical service by the door. That would be underground to be around the corner. And some of the other, more recently added, the wires dangling above would go underground. So
Let's
that
get
elevation would stand out a bit more.
let's get back to Lydia's point for a minute, because there is
Sure.
this sort of a notion about historic preservation, right? It's like, what are we accomplishing? The truth is, I have heard, although I have not personally been in this structure and experienced it, I have heard that even the most ardent supporter of preservation in town has said that the structure is too far gone. And so if we're facing a situation where the structure really can't reasonably be fixed, ideologically, is it that you take it down and build a new one that just looks like the old one? I mean, that's, I think, what Lydia's asking.
If I may, Gordon, you make a very good point. We had a couple of other ideas, and our proposal to you would be essentially to disassemble and replicate. That would give you the outside look. Utilize all existing materials feasible and suitable for reuse, and then the identical location on the lot in structure footprint. When we demoed that, most of the ceilings, Gordon, inside of there had been, unfortunately, they kind of cut into the floor joist so they could get a level ceiling with conventional 2x4s. They sheetrocked over the top of it. The ceilings in some places were down to about 6 foot, but in more modern times, they kind of bastardized the inside of that to cover everything up with sheetrock that wasn't lath and plaster. Our thought process was, and I know your purview is typically only the outside, but the fact that it's in the historic zone and the fact that we love this going into it, we're thinking any of the wide boards from the floor decking that weren't rotted. And what they did over years is that back corner sank. They shimmed it up and then put more floorboards over the top of it. So the back of that's down about 1.5 feet, and everything on the bottom of it is just completely rotted. But our thought was, if we used the inside beams and not in a structural manner, if we conventionally frame that and we put those wide boards on the ceiling, Gordon, and then put the beams underneath that, if one was to be like in the main area of the salt box and you looked up, your illusion would be identical to what the inside of this looked like when they built it, in that you looked up and you saw the deck boards above and you saw the structural beams that were holding that up. Perhaps even with the floor grates that were in here.
Just as a preliminary,
Some of our ideas, although like I said, it's not going to have an effect on the outside, but it certainly could utilize existing materials, maybe not for their structural characteristic, but using whatever we could for existing materials that are salvageable inside of this in a manner that maybe architecturally, it'd be a replication again, but we'd be utilizing the materials we could.
Can you state without question that the structure is so far deteriorated that it cannot be restored?
I guess one can make an argument that anything could be restored, but every of the main structural members.
Let me just say, I'm sorry, could be reasonably restored.
I don't feel it could be. It could not be flitch plated, as you and I have worked on in the cities where you get, a multi-beam where you put plates on each side. You do
this stuff to other stuff, and you jack it up here, and you do all that kind of thing. But
we've looked at maybe jacking the second floor, guys, because the first floor is so far gone, notwithstanding the part that's been conventionally framed. And I'm just afraid that from there up may very well collapse in upon itself, even in the jacking process. And the fact that they're two different structures that they kind of tried to piece at the hip and back of the front salt box and in front of the gabled structure. I don't even know how you would separate those, because the roof systems and the floor systems aren't even of the same construction, kind of the same vintage, that if you jack that, unless you could separate those,
Mhm.
I think that back structure would actually come down. The main carrying beam in the middle of that is horribly eaten by some type of insect. The back is rotted because of the water. All the base is rotted because it sat in sand. And they cobbed up an awful lot of the front section to try to put regular 2x furring on to sheetrock.
You know, I'd love to.
I would like to just ask Luke, because he did go inside and looked at the structure, about his opinion about how stable the structure is. Would you be willing to speak on that, Luke?
Sure. The structure's in rough shape. It definitely is rickety, but I think that if you took apart, if you took 70% of the houses in town and thoroughly gutted them the way this has been gutted, you'd come to the same conclusion with every house in town, pretty much. I think this house has been built kind of on a shoestring budget, even at the time when it was built. But all the old homes didn't conform to code, and a lot of the members that were used were undersized. Cavities weren't created to accept insulation like we do today. So I think,
is it habitable? Is it structurally stable?
No,
it's not habitable. It's been gutted. It's totally gutted. The floor is not even in it. But I mean, obviously, Paul gave you a demolition permit to take the house apart, right?
to see what we had, Luke, absolutely. And when we first walked in there, one would question whether it was habitable. I don't think there's anybody on this commission that would let their family live in there. Before we found out what we had
If
underneath.
you look at the real,
I'm sorry?
sorry to interrupt. I went to the Realtors page. We looked at the interior before it was gutted, just in photographs on the Realtors page. And it did look like it had been lived in relatively recently. I don't know exactly how long ago.
The Chapmans lived in there.
Yeah, maybe, I'm not sure if it was rented out in the summer or used. Maybe
No, they lived there year round.
Yeah, I remember.
Most of you folks, is Rich still on? He knew the folks, Rich Robichaud, he knew the folks, quite well that lived there.
Yes, they were neighbors.
The thing is,
Nobody's lived there for 2.5 years. And when they did live there, they didn't spend a whole lot of time at the house. It's never been rented. It's always been in the same family, in my recollection. The only thing about this house that's significant is the salt box colonial part and the rake trim and the cornice trim. Everything else has been replaced. All the windows have been replaced. All the shingles have been replaced. So the only thing you're talking about original from the outside is that rake trim on the salt box,
Right.
and the cornices. That's it. Everything else has been changed.
Yeah.
The inside
just to
views
show
are
you
very deceptive, because what you're seeing in those views is you're seeing a finished ceiling that's been lowered approximately 10 or 12 inches, and it's hiding all the bad stuff above it. And even the hiding of that is not, if you go from room to room, the ceilings are at different heights, but I don't think any of them were over 6'3" or 4. These were short people, so they didn't care. But the kitchen looks the best, and that's that L part that faces north and east, and that the inside looks the best. The rest of the structure is not so good. And realtors can make anything look great.
That would be an argument to save the existing structure, Richard?
Say again?
Your argument is to save the existing structure based on the
My
ceiling height?
argument is that I don't think it can be saved after seeing,
Yeah,
viewing the inside. No,
I
don't
thought
think.
that's what you initially said, but if you're going to rebuild a new structure and keep the same proportions, all those ceiling heights would get dramatically lower than they are existing, because the the joists would have to increase in
Yeah,
width, the ceiling.
Luke, I'm talking about the Realtors pictures they're showing.
Right.
In the Realtors pictures, the ceilings are much lower. Once they took out and demolished the inside, then you can see how they made those ceilings so low.
Mhm.
They put 2x4s and they sisted them onto existing beams to make everything level, whereas the stuff above it was not. And the upstairs was almost never inhabitable. The floors were different levels. You're almost afraid to stand on the floors.
I mean, to Luke's point.
As I said, the Realtors made it look really good.
So if we start with the presumption that it really can't be saved for whatever reason, and sort of like inclination is, as you start to repair it and start to take things apart, you find more and more stuff and more and more stuff and more and more stuff. So if you were to replicate the massing of the existing building and you were to draw a section through that massing, would you be able to achieve code compliant ceiling heights for habitable space on the first and second floor? Would you actually be able to take that shell and make it work?
I'd have to make it slightly higher, Gordon,
Mhm.
and would have to add, egress windows, would have to make the structure higher to be able to put, conforming, ceiling joist and roof rafters, in there. And that's actually the renderings that we showed were actually, we've done a framing plan that would meet code at an 8-foot ceiling height. And the renderings that we did are representative of an elevated height. And again, in talking to Paul, he very much noted that, we need to meet the wood frame construction manual and the 110-mile-an-hour winds from a structural standpoint, on the rehab of this. So the renderings that we showed, that was part of the reason I wanted to make sure it was, it was proportionally in keeping. And you bring up a very good point, Gordon. That's that, the renderings show the additional elevation of 8-foot ceiling heights in applicable floor joists, 2x10 floor joists and 2x8 roof rafters.
So maybe the broader issue is that, I mean, there are some towns nearby Wellfleet that really don't allow the demolition of a historic structure unless it's like literally condemned.
If you go through your demo delay bylaws, and again, you're kind of looking if in fact the commission, kind of likes the concept, the fact that we're not looking to wait 18 months and put something that's not in keeping. We're trying to work with you folks, but at the end of the day, trying to have a structure that in fact does conform. Even in our application to disassemble and replicate, if you read your definitions on your demo delay bylaws, clearly that would constitute quote unquote demolition. It's up to the purview of this board to determine whether preservation, in which is public interest as determined by the board, whether it's preferably preserved. And I think based on the eclectic style of it, I'd like to think that the board thinks it's preferably, preserved. And if you go to 3.3 of your bylaws, and the board shall determine if the building is preferably preserved. And if the board makes an initial determination that it is, then you hold a public hearing within 45 days. And if that's going to be the case, perhaps at the next regularly scheduled meeting. And then if at the hearing, the board determines that the proposed work, which is what we're showing you in the renderings and what we're planning to do in the replication, would not destroy or substantially diminish the historic value, then it's empowerment of the board to actually let Paul issue a demolition permit based on the submitted plans to replicate what we have. 3.8 also allows you for us to move forward if you don't feel it's preferably preserved. And then with Paul being relatively new, you also have 3.9 that restricts the building inspector from, issuing a building permit. In his opinion, the condition of the building proposes an imminent or substantial threat to public health or safety. Those are, some of the pieces that preferably 3.5 that, if the proposed work would not substantially diminish the historic value, meaning, if your purview is the outside of the building, and we're going to work very diligently to, to replicate what we have on the outside, then you could, in fact, you're empowered to impose, allow a demo permit, especially if we're going to identify and utilize any of the materials in which we may be taken out of there. That means taking it apart, surgically taking it apart with a lull and carpenters as opposed to taking it down with an excavator.
So I infer from what you're saying that you guys really want to demolish the structure because it's unreasonable to try to save it because it's just going to fall apart. It's too much work. You're not going to wind up with anything anyway. So you're asking us to try to kind of find a way to give you guys permission to accelerate that 18-month schedule with the idea that you'll be able to present to us drawings that we will find extremely satisfactory in terms of what we're going to build there.
From an exterior standpoint, from a footprint, Gordon, from a same location on the lot, that is correct. I mean, the demo delay clearly states is up to 18 months. It could be 0 months if you so chose.
So I feel like in order to evaluate exactly what you're going to build there as a replication, that I would need to see, I guess, more drawings.
Sure.
I would need to better understand, see a drawing that has a drawing of the existing exterior elevation and superimposed onto it the new exterior elevation.
Flat two-dimensional elevations. Sure.
Just so you can see the relative heights and the relative scale of, how different is the new building going to be than the existing building. And I would need to see photo documentation of the cornice that you're planning on replicating close up, together with a drawing of that cornice and
how we're going to build it,
listed resources for how you're going to be able to achieve that.
Sure.
Because sometimes when people intend to replicate, you wind up with a house in Wellfleet that looks like it's half in Greenwich, Connecticut. And this house doesn't have that feeling. And given that you really can't recreate the patina unless you use completely reclaimed materials, which is an unreasonable request, people put that little extra crown above the window that was never really there. You know what I mean? There's that little stuff that gets added onto these things that makes it look like it's inauthentic.
And that's not our intent whatsoever, Gordon. In looking at the pictures and looking at our renderings, it would be very easy, to do an exact profile of what that cornice would look like, dimensioned. Then we can do shop drawings on how one would have to cut the trim pieces, or better yet, we could take some of that apart and actually utilize the exact same size, same back cuts, and same dimensions of a small section of the cornice in the rake.
Right. And you
dimension each one of those.
Have it milled or whatever you would do with it to make it.
Yeah, I mean you could just turn around and absolutely just a table router would accomplish that.
And then in terms of things like, you're taking on something that to me is really complicated. How are the joints in the brick handled? How are the joints raked? What is the color of the mortar that's in the brick?
Look at those though, Gordon. They're in such a state of disrepair. There's a pile of brick and that northerly elevation that God knows where that came from.
So if you find an old photograph of the house somewhere and you do some research and you look at how they treated that brick, and is the mortar buff colored mortar, or do we argue that that's not a good idea because then it doesn't age like gray mortar would? There are all these questions that come into my mind whenever somebody says that they're going to replicate something, and maybe it comes from my years on Landmarks West in Manhattan, or the New York City Landmarks Commission, where,
All valid points though, Gordon, all very valid points.
and I think there are a myriad of things like that, of those little details, that little minutia, that ultimately determines whether or not you've successfully recreated the feeling and the intention of the existing building, or whether you've taken some of it and you've put 2012 stuff on it. So it
21, yeah.
looks off.
Mhm.
2021, whatever year you want to pick.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks off. Do you understand what I'm saying? And again, I never want to give anybody a hard time. I've just been down this road before myself, and I've drawn things that have been constructed. One of them here in town, where someone didn't do this, and I'm embarrassed by it today, and it upsets me. And I'm very, very conscious of the fact that even a small change to one of my neighbor's houses, where all of a sudden those crowns were on the windows and the mutton bars are always black, and there's this kind of vocabulary that gets imposed on an authentic Wellfleet structure.
And I was thinking the black mutton bars because that's what they use diagonally across the street on Main Street. However, I'm not.
That little house diagonally across the street at the corner of Witts Lane.
Main and School.
At the corner of Witts Lane and Main Street. If you're coming down Main Street and you pass Squires, and on your left is Witts Lane, across Witts Lane on the left side, there's that beautiful white house. It's been there forever.
Well,
when I was a kid, that had dark green mutton bars. That was the first time I had seen that. And it was totally.
I am wide open, Gordon and commission members, to a color or a quantity, to be honest with you.
I guess, you know, I think that what it is that if you get the massing right, and you show us a drawing that shows that the massing is right and as good as it can be given what the code requirements are today, and if you can substantiate that the house has to be demolished because it really can't be restored, then it comes down to the details.
Right.
It comes down to all that little tiny stuff that I was just talking about that's going to make or break the project, that it's going to make it look like a facsimile of what was there, or it's going to be built out of utter respect for what was there.
And quite frankly, I go one step further. I can send an architectural crew down and measure, each piece of trim, or Gordon, or we say we're going to use the standard on the salt box for cornice, rake, fascia, and trim width, and do that throughout. I'm
not even sure that's right. I have to say it's such a big thing to me. It really is. It just means a lot to me, because part of what's so cool about that structure is that it developed over time.
But the other part is
it's telling a story by the differences that you see on the outside of it.
And some of that's, quite frankly, just the eclectic shape of it. It's pretty unique. And then you got a salt box that you say, was it really a salt box until you throw the dormer on it? Did that add or take away? And then they had the kitchen on the north side, and then they add this other, conventional, like a quarter cape structure on the west side.
I did a new house not that long ago up in northern Westchester County for some people, and it was interesting because they wanted an old house, but they couldn't find an old house that was, as big as people in Westchester County want old houses. So what we did is we wrote a story about the house. That first they constructed the center portion, and that was stone. Then there was something beside it that was wood. And we kind of wrote a narrative for how the house had developed. And then the man was a blacksmith, and he needed a blacksmith shop. So that was over there. We kind of did that to kind of I guess fake what this house really has.
But you got a not so affluent history here of.
Yeah, it's kind of run down.
It probably wouldn't be a story that would sell, Gordon, in this particular case. We could emulate it, but I'm not sure that it'd even make it on YouTube. But
so can I rewind, because I'm still not clear that this house needs to be demolished. And I'm concerned, as Lydia is, about the historic materials. And what I heard Luke saying is that many of the houses in town have these kinds of structures and are still standing. Did I hear you correctly, Luke?
I think that this house was built on a budget, probably originally, and it's been changed over the years, which doesn't help the structural integrity. But I also think that if you thoroughly gutted most of the old houses in town and stepped back and looked at what you were left with, you'd be able to find enough to go into the category of needing a new structure, not having it meet the current standards, having compromised lumber that's been affected by powder post beetles or dry rot or, improper flashing, weather damage, cracked wood, undersized wood. I mean, there's so many things that affect the structures when you strip all the plaster out, all the flooring out, and you're left with a shell. Even some of the really nice, well-kept houses in town, you could stand back and pick apart the structure to convince yourself that it would need to be torn down. Especially if you're trying to meet today's.
You go one step further though, Luke, being a builder and you put yourself in the building inspector's shoes. Clearly the code that the house needed to be built to and needed to comply to was the code that prevailed at the time in which it was built. And most of these, there was no code at that point in time. So from a building inspector's standpoint, unless you're doing substantial renovations, all you have to do is comply with the code in which prevailed at the time in which it was built, which was no code. However, exposing what we have there today, and Paul's thought on making sure that whatever we do there meets the new wood frame construction manual and the wind loading and the snow loading that are imposed with what we have, that certainly puts us at a disadvantage, Luke. I think you'd concur with that.
I'd like to.
Can I make a couple of
circle back.
comments?
Oh, wait a second. That was.
Could I make a couple of comments, Lily?
Oh, yeah, just in a moment. I'd like to say a few words myself.
Okay.
Some of the things that we tend to do when we're facing difficult reviews is we look to experts for advice. And that's, in certain cases, it's been helpful to talk with, say, Peter McMahon of the Cape Cod Modern House Trust when there's an issue of mid-century modern buildings. And we also have there's a great resource in the Cape Cod Commission's Sarah Korjeff. So what I would recommend is having an advisory opinion from Sarah. We've often done this in the past, and it's just another layer of information that helps us in the decision-making process. It slows things down a little bit. She's very diligent. She's right nearby. She's able to visit the properties. And I would move that we ask for an advisory opinion from Sarah Korjeff.
I second.
And then take it from there.
I think that's a great idea.
Great idea.
Yeah. I think that the renderings of the proposed new house, there's no denying that it looks almost identical to the house that's there. And I'm sure everybody appreciates the effort. With the proportions, I know that I've struggled to keep proportions the same. And when you take something down and now your arm's twisted into meeting all the current codes, and, it can be challenging. That's part of what I don't like about trying to build in the historic district in Provincetown, primarily, is that it's really kind of hard to to make something conform to code and keep the same dimensions. And I don't know if that superimposing the proposed drawings over the, over what you have, that sounds like a good idea. I don't know if you might have challenges with the staircase. I mean, obviously that's uncomfortable and doesn't conform to code, and it, it should, if, for safety reasons, and to have a house that's comfortable, obviously you'd want to rework that. And I think that I was in there with you, and I totally agree that it would be a nightmare to try to pick your way through the house and save it, and it may very well turn into building a new house the hard way, bit by bit, if you tried to.
That's a good point, Luke. And now we have an opportunity to comment on sort of what the proposal might be. But I think getting the opinion from Sarah is probably a really good idea.
There might also be, the possibility of retaining parts of the house. 75%, who knows?
Right.
That's to be determined.
So if we actually apply for a demo permit, the max we'll have to wait then would be 18 months. So I guess we should get a demo permit and work in parallel with you folks while Sarah's looking at it and/or Peter's looking at it. And then worst case, 18 months, we take it down and put up anything we want to put up, correct? Or you can make it shorter.
Yeah, it's an up to 18-month demolition
Up to
delay.
18 months.
Mm.
And there certainly are provisions in your demo code that would clearly allow you to do what we're proposing to do.
There's one other good thing about the demolition delay is that you do hold a public hearing, and so you invite the public, you invite abutters, and so there's people can weigh in, because I think especially with Wellfleet Center, if something's gone all of a sudden, it's there's a certain amount of regret, and we know with a building on Pamet Point Road, a very, very old house, maybe from the 1700s. That house went under a demolition delay, the 18-month, that time it was 12 months, I think. And they did demolish the house, and then they left town about 3 years later. So it's, I think it's a serious question. And that,
yeah, we would prefer not going down that route. However, I don't want to wait forever.
No, we're very good about the timing, I think.
And
always
scheduled a public hearing at the next regularly scheduled meeting would bring up if this in fact is a preferably preserved building, and you get input from the public and or the neighbors, that would allow you the purview that with our sections and renderings and cornice and rake details, if in fact, based on 3.5, if you feel that the proposed work would not destroy or substantially diminish the historic value, considering we're looking to build the same structure, then you can waive the demolition delay and say, go take it down with an excavator or take it down with a lull and save these 3 or 4 pieces and build what you say you're going to build.
Okay, I'm sorry. I think we just need to make some decisions here. And we actually can't have the hearing at the time of our next regularly scheduled meeting. It would need to be a separate time, I believe. Is that true, Lydia?
No, that's not true.
There's, you have to hold it within, first you would have to get the demolition permit application in, and then the clock starts ticking from there.
Yeah, 45 days. So if you want to have it when your regular meeting schedule, 30 days is certainly, there's enough time to publish it. I can reach out to Paul and get that demo permit in tomorrow. Again, our demo intent is to do what we've presented this evening and not wait up to 18 months and then put a structure up that you have no control over at all. And that's not our intent whatsoever. It wasn't when we presented in November or December, and certainly is not now.
The point of the delay is to have a conversation about the intents. Our intent, your intent. And I think for now we have the motion and a second on requesting an advisory opinion. So I would ask that we vote on that,
Mhm.
get in touch with Sarah. And it would seem to me that, I know, once we do that, we'll take the next step.
Yeah. Okay. So the motion on the table right now is to to contact Sarah for a consultation. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And Lydia made that motion, and who seconded it? Gordon. Okay. So I vote aye. Merrill?
Jim, I.
Lydia,
Luke,
I.
Sorry, Lydia. Luke, I.
Gordon, I.
Okay. And then are we
Rich,
all-
did you have something else to add?
I just would like to go on. So are we also voting for a continuance? Or are we just voting for Sarah Korchef and leaving it at that?
Yeah, I think that was the only thing in the motion.
Okay, all right. And Rich, did you have something that you wanted to add before we close this discussion?
You're speaking to me,
Yes.
not Rick Rivero, is that correct?
Yeah, I'm
Yes.
sorry.
Well, a couple of things.
No,
A couple of things. First of all, my house has many parts like this house in much better condition, and all my muttons are white. I don't have any black muttons in the whole house. That's the first thing. The second thing is, I have to live with whatever occurs on this lane. I drive past it every day. I look at it every day. My family has been here since 1899. They've looked at it every day. They've seen the changes. And I'm afraid if this demolition delay goes through in 18 months, I'm going to see some kind of a modern structure that I don't like to drive by every day. That's all I want to say.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate your input and your previous letter.
Can I ask Lydia and Merrill? I just want to ask you a point on the side. So if we vote to get an opinion from Sarah, do we also vote for a continuance because we're still contemplating what to do? Should that be a second motion?
Or I could reapply, Gordon, whatever the preference of the commission is. I'd like to be back in front of you every month until this thing's done. I'll be in front of you, Gordon, showing you the cornice detail and see if I can get you by during the week. And, you create a little billing,
How are you going to rake those brick joints? But in the meantime,
you got to look at what we have. If I rake them that way, even on top of a concrete foundation, they'd fall apart. All the bricks are there. I got to clean them.
Good.
So that was my question as well, Gordon, was about a continuance, but Lydia, you seem to be saying that we
Well,
first see what Sarah has to say.
I think we can keep it on, we'll keep it on the agenda. I think that's clear that needs to happen. So
I don't think we're not on the clock for any motion or any type of decision like a wetlands or, any type of public hearing. So I don't think we're on the clock for anything, guys. So I'd like to just stay on and continue this discussion.
Great. And do we need to vote on that continuance, or do we just say, yes, he'll be on the agenda for next month?
if you want to be safe, let's vote on it. I think that it's not.
I move for a continuance for 15 Squires Pond Lane for next month.
But we'll keep it on the agenda. Right.
Yeah.
So who's seconding?
I seconded.
Thank you, Jim. All right, Merrill, I.
Lydia, I.
Jim, I.
Luke, I.
Gordon, I.
Okay, so we'll see you next month.
Guys, thank you very much. Go ahead and keep the thoughts flowing too. I'd love to have you swung by?
Yes, I have been by. I've looked at it. And I've spoken to a number of people who have been in it, but let's just keep going.
Good.
Thank you.
I know I can't talk to you outside of this meeting, so I figured I'd ask the questions while I'm here.
Right, ask away.
Thank you very much, Rick. Appreciate your coming and your detail and your care about trying to recreate a structure that will honor the current house.
Yes, I second that, Merrill. I feel like the intention is really in the right place. it's just us doing a little bit of soul searching, I think, to figure out what the right answer is.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks, guys. We're gonna continue taking some more of the inside apart. We didn't take the rest of the kitchen apart. It'd be interesting to see what we find there, but we certainly look forward to moving forward.
Good.
Great. So we'll see you next month, and thank you to Rick and Richard for coming. Appreciate it.
Richard, thank you very much, sir.
Okay. So let's see, the next item on the agenda is Briar Lane.
Mhm.
And I have not heard from Maya and Thor. I did write them another letter this month, basically saying that I think it's terrific that they are providing housing in that location, and that they could actually get special funding for that some of their supporters had mentioned affordable housing. And so I said, if they chose to do affordable housing in that location, that they could actually get funding for both affordable housing and historic preservation if they were willing to preserve the house. But once again, I have not heard back from them.
Thank you for doing that, Meryl.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
It's a good email.
And then is there more? Well, Carol's not here. She was maybe going to give us an update on the Wampanoag gravesite, but we don't need to consider that tonight unless you have any information about that, Lydia.
I don't.
Okay. And I guess, well, in terms of community preservation, historic plan, I guess workshop would be the next thing, because do you want to give any updates regarding the Form Bs, Lydia?
We got another batch from the preservation consultant, Lynn Smilage, and those are now in our Google Drive. And I think that in the past, what we've done is divide them up to just kind of proofread them for typographical errors or other little, things that might pop up. So I think there's something like 17 of them, and maybe they could be shared, or yeah, I think that's it.
Okay. Do we want to talk about whether anybody here wants to participate in that editing, or do you want to deal with that later?
Maybe you could bring it up at the next meeting, and
Okay.
I'm willing to do 5, something like that.
Okay. Yeah, I'm willing to do 5 as well. And then we have how many more?
I think there's 17 in this batch.
Okay. Okay, and then the next item is a workshop, and I don't know if everybody got the list that I sent about basically community participation possibilities, but one thing that the Historical Commission has done in the past is workshops, and we didn't do one last year because of COVID. And I was thinking that it might be a good idea to try to do something this year. Of course, it's challenging now because we have 3 members leaving, and it may be that we need to spend all of our time with recruiting. I don't know if we're going to have time and energy for a workshop. I think everybody knows that Lydia will be leaving us, which will be a big loss, and Carol and Tom. So all 3 of them have done a lot for the commission and have had significant positions in the commission. And so it's going to be a challenging time. And we're very fortunate that Gordon has agreed to be co-chair and Jim has agreed to be secretary. And I'm very grateful to both of you for being willing to do that. And Luke and I need to connect about a possibility on his end. So I guess the question is whether we want to think about a workshop. I had contacted Lynn Smilage, who's our preservation specialist, who does our Form Bs, about whether she does public speaking and whether she'd be interested in doing a presentation. And she said that she has done public speaking. She hasn't done exactly this, but she said she would be happy to do a presentation about the historic houses and the stories related to the historic houses in Wellfleet. And that she, I asked her to give us a sense about a speaker fee. And if I remember correctly, she said she thought she could do that for about $400, which, you know, we do have some funds for this kind of thing. And I was thinking it might make sense to try to do something like this. Normally it's been done in the fall. So we could think about planning ahead and doing it then, and hopefully by then the dust will have settled from all of our transitions, and hopefully we'll have more people on board. But it's hard to know, you know, there's a select board position open, and I realize that's a lot more responsibility, but nobody's signed up for that. So
What do you think about, would it be a Zoom meeting or would it be an in-person? That might.
yeah, well, I was thinking we
color.
could do a Zoom meeting because it's so hard to plan for an in-person meeting. And then in that case, and I also don't know about her time and what's best for her, but if it's a Zoom meeting, it would be possible to do it sooner than the fall. It would be nice to have an in-person meeting, but.
Marilyn, Lydia, I'm sorry. I have to excuse myself. Something happened with Carter while we were on the phone. And so I'm going to go. That's why if I appeared to be a little bit distracted and anxious, it's just that. So I'm going to go help Ed take care of that.
Okay.
And,
All right.
and then we'll circle back later.
All right. Thanks a lot, Gordon.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. See you later. Good luck.
Thank you. I'm sure it always works out somehow. See you.
So I don't know if people have thoughts about this or if we should just wait and talk about it next time when more of us are here.
I think that's a good idea, maybe to wait. It's
Okay.
not a pressing issue.
No, it's
really.
not.
And it might be good to think about it for the fall or maybe winter.
Okay, great.
I agree. Yeah.
Excellent. All right. So I think we can close the meeting unless, we need to approve the minutes, don't we?
Yeah. Carol covered all the corrections that I had or edits.
Mhm.
So I'm comfortable. I think they came out great.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with it too. Do we need to have an official vote about the minutes?
Yeah, that's typically what they do.
All right, I
I'll
move to accept the minutes.
I'll second that.
Okay, Meryl votes aye.
Lydia,
Aye.
Luke, I.
Was there a Jim aye?
Yes, there was. I'm sorry. Yes.
It's okay, thanks. Okay, so thank you all for being here, and I think we can close the meeting. So I move to close the meeting.
look at that. 6:33.
Okay.
All the best, everyone. Have a nice, well, vote aye for the, I think there's consensus.
Carol,
that
aye?
we're in.
Aye.
Yeah. Enjoy the weekend, the rest of the week and the weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you. You too.
Yeah, thanks to all of you for being here, and it will be even more spring-like when we see each other again. Hooray! Okay, take good care.
Okay, thanks.
Bye-bye.